Take a deep breath and cast aside any preconceived notions about a gentle religious figure depicted in stained glass windows. We are traveling back in time to one of the most brutal and suffocating periods in human history. Judea, under the heel of Rome. To understand why an unarmed man could shake such a great empire, we must understand the nature of power. Rome did not rule with legions or gladius short swords. They ruled with something far more sophisticated, the monopoly of reality. In that world, Caesar was not just a king, he was a god, the one who defined what peace was, what justice was, and who had the right to live. Rome operated on a simple but absolutely effective psychological algorithm: obey or perish. The fear of death was the invisible chain Rome used to lead millions of people by the nose. As you walk the cobblestone streets of Jerusalem, you see rows of crosses like terrifying signs, a reminder that all resistance is futile. But it is in this thick atmosphere of fear that a quiet revolution has begun. The man from Nazareth appeared not as a gladiator, but as a codebreaker. He looked at the colossal machine of Rome and recognized a fatal flaw. Rome only had power over those who feared death. If you could strip away that fear, you would neutralize the entire arsenal of the empire. This was not an armed rebellion like that of Spartacus or Bar Kokhba rebellions that used violence to replace violence. This was an invasion of the mind's operating system. Jesus performed the greatest power flip in history when he declared that his kingdom did not belong to this world. By shifting the battlefield from physical land to the realm of consciousness, he rendered all of Caesar's armies obsolete. Rome could seize land, but they could not seize a soul that had declared itself sovereign. This raised a chilling question for the Roman elite. How can you rule someone who has nothing left to lose and fears nothing, not even death? When Jesus walked among the crowds, he did not call for swords, he called for awakening. He taught them that freedom is not something bestowed by parliament or the emperor, but an inherent attribute of the soul. Each time he healed a marginalized person, each time he touched a leper whom Rome considered trash, he was engaging in high-level political sabotage. He was building a network of people of intrinsic value, people who no longer needed imperial recognition to feel human. This is the clash between hard power and zero power. One representing the power of accumulation and oppression, the other the power of release and absolute freedom. Rome represents the collective ego of humanity, which craves control and expansion. Jesus represents the pure being which simply exists and loves. This clash didn't just happen 2,000 years ago. It's an eternal battle within each of us between becoming a slave to pragmatic fears or becoming a free rebel within our own souls. Empathy is often confused with mere kindness, but in the hands of a strategic rebel, it is a weapon of mass destruction against hierarchical structures. Consider how Rome and contemporary religious institutions operated. They were based on separation: rich and poor, holy and sinful, Roman and barbarian. Separation creates control. You divide and conquer, you keep the masses in a state of insecurity and craving privilege. But Jesus performed an act of guerrilla sociology when he erased these boundaries simply by his presence. When he sat down to eat with tax collectors, those considered the parasites of society, he wasn't simply having a dinner. He was destroying the entire moral classification system of the time. This action sends a shocking message. Your dignity is not defined by how well you obey the rules, but by the fact that you exist. In the eyes of empire, people are resources. In the eyes of Jesus, people are sacred. This empathetic strategy is an attack on the very roots of elitism. When you empower those at the bottom of society, when you tell a despised woman that she is worth as much as a senator, you are dismantling power structures that are based on subservience. Modern audiences often downplay the concept of loving your enemies, but look at it through the lens of power psychology. Loving your enemies is the ultimate act of resistance because it deprives your enemy of the right to define you. If someone slaps you and you slap back, you are acting according to their rules. But if you stand firm with composure and empathy, you have broken their script. You have refused to be part of the cycle of violence. This is how Jesus weaponized compassion to render Roman brutality absurd and outdated. He didn't teach people to endure humiliation. He taught them to rise above humiliation with unwavering self-respect. This created a virus within the system. Compassion spread more powerfully than fear. Roman soldiers, trained to be killing machines, began to see something strange in those they were ordered to oppress, a peace that their own commanders lacked. As empathy shattered the ironclad armor, the empire began to crumble from within. This wasn't a battle of fists, but a battle of heartbeats. Jesus built an empire of presence, where the lines between us and them ceased to exist. In a world of scarcity and conflict, he introduced a reality of abundance and sharing. He demonstrated that true power lies not in those who can take the most, but in those who can give the most and still feel fulfilled. This is the hidden essence. His empathy was not a passive emotion, but an active fight against the inhumanity of mechanical systems. He transformed love into a tool of political liberation, proving that the truth of the soul is stronger than any royal decree. When we enter the governor's palace, we are not merely witnessing a trial. We are watching a psychological battle of wits between two entirely different realities. Pontius Pilate embodies everything the world considers success. He possesses power, education, status, and the backing of a superpower. Represents practical truth, a truth that can be bent to serve political interests. Facing him is a man riddled with wounds, without a protector, without a glamorous defense. This is the clash between Roman nihilism and Jesus' logos. Pilate's famous question, "What is truth?" is not a profound philosophical question. It is the sigh of someone who has sold their soul to power. For Pilate, truth is something the strong can impose on the weak. But Jesus stood there, not to argue the truth, but to asterisk the truth. His silence in the face of accusations was an extremely sharp weapon. In psychology, the talkative are often the ones trying to convince or conceal their insecurity. The silent one, under threat, is the one who holds the real power. The more Pilate pressed, the more he realized he was losing control. He realized he could kill the man's body, but he could not touch his essence. There was a chilling moment when Pilate realized their roles had been reversed. He, the governor general, was the prisoner of political intrigue, of the fear of rebellion, and of the rage of the crowd. Jesus, though chained, was the only one free in the room, because he was not bound by any of the fears or desires of this world. This is the ultimate lesson in personal sovereignty. Jesus demonstrates that a person's power lies not in what they can force others to do, but in their unshakable presence under pressure. When he responded that Pilate's power was merely given from above, he stripped Rome of its legitimacy. He relegated Pilate to his rightful place, a small pawn in a grand scheme he could not comprehend. This confrontation is a reminder to all of us in this age of information, manipulation, and digital power. Truth needs no noise to exist. Truth needs only a firm presence. When you know who you are, when you are rooted in a value higher than what the world can offer, you become invulnerable to any pilot of your life. You no longer react to threats. You simply exist and allow the truth to reveal itself through that presence. The death on Golgotha is often seen as the ultimate sacrifice. But from the perspective of a psychological revolution, it was the greatest strategic judo move of all time. Rome used the cross as the ultimate instrument of humiliation, a way to tell the world, this is the fate of those who dare to dream of freedom. The cross was designed to strip away human dignity before taking their lives. But Jesus did something no military strategist could have predicted. He appropriated the symbol of failure to transform it into a symbol of absolute victory. By voluntarily accepting crucifixion, he unmasked the empire. He transformed a killing machine into a launching pad for an immortal ideology. This is the concept of victory through defeat. When a system uses violence to suppress someone who doesn't resist with violence, that system exposes its own decay and powerlessness. Each nail driven into Jesus' hands was not an act of submission. It was a hammer blow to the coffin of Roman ideology. Rome thought it was ending a problem, but in reality, it was creating a myth. Jesus' suffering on the cross was not a sign of weakness. It was an act of soul chemistry, transforming hatred into forgiveness. The words uttered in extreme pain, "Forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing," were a fatal blow to the heart of every violent structure. It broke the cycle of revenge that had governed human history for thousands of years. When you forgive those who are crucifying you, you have completely conquered them. You have proven that there is a power within humanity greater than the instinct for survival. This created a seismic shift in human consciousness. Death was no longer the end, and fear was no longer the master. The resurrection, whether you understand it literally or symbolically, is an affirmation that light and love are more fundamental realities than matter and violence. Rome failed because they could only kill what was tangible. But Jesus left behind something intangible, yet immortal, a new belief in the divine dignity of humanity. The cross, from an instrument of empire, became an ornament on the necks of its later rulers. It is a great irony of history, proving that silent resistance and selfless sacrifice have a more enduring power to transform reality than any invasion. Now that the dust of history has settled, we must face the truth that the Roman Empire never truly disappeared. It only changed form. Today, we live in digital empires, consumer empires, and empire empires. We are still led astray by fear of not having enough money, fear of not being beautiful enough, fear of social rejection, fear of the meaninglessness of life. Modern-day Pilates are algorithms, peer pressure, and the voices in our heads that constantly tell us to conform for safety. Jesus' silent revolution is not an event to remember, but an invitation to join. The greatest lesson of the great rebel is, your freedom lies on the other side of fear. You cannot change the world by fighting it on its terms. You can only change the world by changing your own vibrational frequency. True strength is self-mastery. It lies in being able to stand amidst a world of chaos and hatred, while maintaining a heart full of empathy and peace. This requires a kind of courage few possess. The courage to be nobody by the world's standards, in order to be everything by the soul's standards. When you shed your false ego, empty titles, and petty fears, you are the greatest rebel of all. You are continuing the journey of that scarred man. The core value of this journey is not to seek a god to worship, but to realize that you, too, carry within you the seeds of that divine indomitability. Don't wait for a political revolution or an external salvation. Conduct a silent revolution in your living room, in your office, and in your most private thoughts. Choose forgiveness over judgment, truth over convenience, and presence over distraction. When millions of individuals perform kenosis, the shedding of their ego, the world's brutal power structures will automatically crumble because they no longer have hostages to control. You hold the key to your own chains. Look in the mirror and ask yourself, am I a docile citizen of the empire of fear or a rebel of love? That choice will not only determine your future, but the future of human consciousness itself. Walk with the integrity of one who knows that death is merely an illusion and love is the only reality that cannot be crucified. That is the deepest hidden essence of the man from Nazareth, and it is the eternal legacy for those who are brave enough to listen and become it. The journey never ends. It's only just beginning with each breath you take right now.